Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys in Africa. You know we love the Big C tribe. We love them in Canada. But Big C, there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful June 14th, 2018. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys?
Well, Charlton, we've been trying to figure out a way down here to bootleg some of these World Cup hockey tickets over in Russia. and if we can't bootleg them, maybe we can trade some moonshine for some vodka and some tickets.
Oh, yeah. You've always been a businessman. I've seen you do some negotiating, Big C, and I think you got a good old idea. Can you imagine joining live on the Big C Sports Show with Vladimir Putin? So, Big C, wait, hold on. He's already been on the line, Big C, so he's already tapped into the line. So much going on in the sports universe from NBA basketball. Where will LeBron James go? Where will James Harden? Is he still going to stay in Houston? I hear they got guys like Chris Paul that might be wanting to move again. It's good he does State Farm commercials. He's always injured, Big C, so I don't know if anybody else beats that. We love baseball. They're really swinging the bat. The Giants avoid the sweep down in Florida. We got them good boys trying to play some golf, but it seems like that golf club has a mind of its own, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the U.S. Open right now has been a vicious golf course for all the greats.
Yeah.
You know, you think about Roy, Jordan, and Phil. They're feeling the pain of the course, Charlton. They're so far over the cut right now that they may not make the weekend.
Wouldn't that be a shame?
And when you look at the leaderboard, Charlton,
yeah,
you got a log jam up at the top. You got 4 golfers sitting up there: Piercy, Poulter, Healy, and Dustin Johnson, who went in as the favorite. But even the course was tough on him. He bogeyed a couple holes, Charlton. So,
yeah.
Shinnecock right now is being a dog to the golfers. I mean, and Tiger. Tiger can't figure out a way to get through the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, if he could ever skip the first round and start playing on day 2, he would be in contention. But for some reason, he doesn't listen. The course is long. He figures he can still hit it as long as Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy, which he can't, Charlton.
Yeah.
He has to learn how to take a lesser club and stay on the fairway.
Yeah, you think about what you just said. I do want to say this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. I thought I saw Conor McGregor driving Big C's Escalade. He's trying to get out of some trouble. And I say, what? Big C, he throws things. He might damage the Escalade, Big C. You might want to get it back, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's been known to throw metal objects at vehicles, Charlton,
yeah.
large vehicles that are pulling out of a parking space. Conor McGregor found himself in court in New York yesterday, facing charges of battery and mischief and everything. And, he'll get over the charges, Charlton. But, it just shows the sports world is all over the place. Here it is. He used to be one of the mainstays for the MMA, Charlton.
Yeah.
He no longer has a relationship with that group anymore, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, they've gone out and signed a former football player that is getting a lot of heckling, Charlton, from the sports world and media world.
Yeah.
Dana White went out and signed former NFL defensive end Greg Hardy.
Really? Why?
And there's a lot of outcry about Greg Hardy. We all know of his former conviction that was overturned for domestic violence and all of that. But I'm trying to figure out, what the hell do people think the MMA is?
Yeah.
It's the sport of violence. You got men beating up men. You got women beating up women.
Yeah.
That's domestic violence, Charlton.
Wow.
So, this is what the MMA makes its money off of.
Yeah.
And so when I listen to the sports world and this outcry against Greg Hardy going out, earning a living in something that he's used to doing, being violent.
Yeah.
Because we see what Conor McGregor did, and that was on videotape.
Yeah.
No one's crying about Conor McGregor earning a living. So I wonder what the world of the sports enthusiasts and writers and broadcasters think. Is he supposed to go out and get on welfare? Is he supposed to go out and live on food stamps? You know, because he's a man with a skill still. You know, and a skill that's made for the MMA octagon, Charlton.
Yep.
And Dana White saw that. So he signed him to join his organization, Charlton.
Yeah.
So when I listen to our sports brethren out there crying about Greg Hardy earning a living in a sports that's pure violence and you know, sanctioned by every country in the world.
Yeah.
And they're saying, you know, he should not be allowed to participate. Show me what guy in the MMA, and even half the women, that are saints, Charlton.
Not too many as far as I know, Big C, but I do want to bring this up too. When I saw what happened with McGregor, and I cover a lot of the MMA, and I follow that sport, so I really love the sport. But what I do know, and I wanted to ask your thoughts on this, and anybody listening, when we talk about people being punished for a crime, and you have someone like McGregor, and he gets obviously out of trouble, he's a Caucasian man, okay? He's an Irish guy, and some people were actually injured when he threw whatever he threw through the bus window.
It was a hand truck.
A hand truck that you use to take baggage at an airport. So is it okay? I mean, I just wonder if the average African-American man were to do that, do they get off, or do they get I know he kind of walked himself into the jail. He wasn't beaten over the head and taken in. And now there seems to be more concern with him getting into the octagon again than going through some type of counseling or some anger management. I think they send a lot of men through anger management, and there's no talk of him going through anger management. It's almost like they're saying, well, that's boys being boys. Do you see that, or am I out of line, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what I see is that Conor McGregor earned $100 million, you know, to stuff with by
so I'm out of line.
Okay?
Yeah.
So when you look at that, he has entitlement now.
Yeah.
That's the thing. As they say, he has that FU money.
Yeah.
That, you know, I can walk in the court, I can be brash.
Yeah.
I can be cocky and arrogant.
Yeah.
I can afford an attorney.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing, Charlton. He can afford an attorney. So they would cop a plea deal to a lesser misdemeanor of, you know, some type of disorderly destruction of private property.
Yeah.
You know, he'll pay behind the scenes, he'll pay restitution to those fighters that were allegedly injured on the bus.
Yeah.
You know, he'd break them off $1 million a piece. Now, that still leaves him with roughly $98 million, okay?
Yeah.
or some change that he hasn't spent it all.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is what you're looking at with Conor McGregor. He'll get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
He won't get any time. As you said, if he was a minority male that committed that type of assault on private property and individuals, Charlton,
yeah,
he would probably still be incarcerated.
Well,
this is the same type of thing that we've basically looked at Greg Hardy with before.
Yes.
That he was convicted by a prosecutor and a judge, and he was given a 30-day sentence that was rescinded, and the conviction was overturned, but he went to trial. Now, we will see if there's equal justice in America. This is the sports world we're talking about. We're not just talking about the layman world. We're talking about the sports world. And we're talking on the East Coast. Now, you got to realize Greg Hardy's was in Carolina.
Yes.
So we know of the makeup of the Carolinas, Charlton, as far as how they treat the races and ethnic divide there in that area. So we're talking about the Big Apple, Charlton, the number one city in America.
Yeah.
How will he be treated by the judicial system, Charlton? And there's no speculation about what he did.
Oh, we know it.
Well, let me go back. This videotape. Okay, now, it's been proven that videotape is not always accurate.
Yes.
Because one of the things they said, well, we don't know what all transpired. We don't know what happened prior to the camera came on.
Yeah.
But that's going to be part of the defense. He will use the police officer defense. No offense to police officers, but that's the defense that he will use.
Yeah.
We don't know what all was said. We don't know what occurred prior to the camera coming on. So, you know, based on that, Charlton, and the rate of people of his complexion getting off in that region,
yes,
going to get crossed out.
Well, I got to bring it up because we were talking about this just the other day, and I had to write it down. So don't wave time. Like when you see your neighbors and they drive up over you don't wave at them. So when you get charged with a crime, you don't want to waive time. I mean, for a lot of people, it's going to benefit them if they just write that down. when it may or may not happen to them or someone they know. But here's, you know, and I know you brought up the money. I thought justice was about right and wrong, not money, but I know I'm naive. But when you look at what young men do, I've known, even going back when I was a young boy in school, that some guys got in trouble because they were throwing rocks at buildings at a school. And not only did they get expelled from school, I mean, they got in trouble, they got expelled from school. I'm sure they also ended up on probation and they had to do a little bit of community service or whatever they did. But there was no rush to get them back in school. In fact, some of them had to go to continuation high school because of destruction of property. Now, and I just got to bring this up because a lot of kids want to know, what are the laws? You know, what are the rules, Big C? What are the rules for anybody, black, white, male, female? But when we have someone like a McGregor, and it's almost like that fight that he had with Floyd Money Mayweather, there was so much tension down in Las Vegas. There were so many people that had issues outside of the octagon, and we know it was a staged fight, but that attitude, that atmosphere, when young kids of color are engaging in that same behavior, I don't see the same leniency that I've seen with a Caucasian male. And that's for young Caucasian and African Americans and people of all colors to do your own research. Google that, the Kerner Commission, and how laws fared it out. We still say 7 out of 10 times black Americans are falsely accused. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they are, because, you know, people can railroad them. That's what society has a history of. It's just like with the stop and frisk, and they had to do something other than that. Law enforcement wouldn't have just stopped them. They wouldn't arrest them. You know, those people have a history of that. That's what you expect from them. This is what's always used, Charlton, when you come to defining stopping a minority person in America.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, let's look at the drug epidemic, and I'm not looking at it lightly in America, Charlton.
No.
They call it the opioid epidemic, excuse me.
Yeah.
They say it's a medical crisis. Why? Because 90% of the users are Caucasian.
Yeah.
So it's a medical epidemic. Now, if we go back and look at the number of minority Americans that are still in prison in America, in the states where marijuana is legal, let's look at California, look at the state of Washington,
yeah,
state of Colorado, Charlton, these states have legalized marijuana and has had it for some time, and even Nevada now. But the people are still being incarcerated for crimes that they committed several years ago, decades ago, Charlton,
yeah,
for distribution of marijuana, even though it's legal now.
Yes.
They cannot get their sentence commuted because they are minorities.
Yeah.
And think about it, they call it a drug crisis, okay, because minorities were selling it and consuming it.
Yeah.
So it was a drug crisis.
Yeah.
Because they were the main ones that were in that system, Charlton, dealing with it. But now that white America, mainstream America, is making billions of dollars off of it, Charlton,
yeah,
it's a legal situation.
You know, I love.
But you don't think about commuting the sentences
no.
of those that are locked up. And so when I look at the opiate crisis in America, Charlton, that it's a medical crisis. When you're dealing with the mainstream society, Charlton, it becomes medical. It's something that they need help. They need counseling.
Yeah.
They need, rehab. But for minorities, let's just lock them up.
And that's what we want to change. And we know the change will come. That gentleman named Jenkins with the Philadelphia Eagles really thinks he's doing a
Malcolm Jenkins. He
and Kaepernick. And this is for all people, but especially black fathers. I really want to, I want to take on that Million Man March mentality that Farrakhan had back in the day about 2 decades ago. And it called for atonement. It calls for people looking at what we can do better as a group. And mainstream's welcome to join. It's not about excluding anybody. Because we know that when we speak to white judges, most of our young black citizens in this country that behave like Conor McGregor, they're not trying to get them back into work. They're not trying to get them back into the octagon. They don't have the mothership showing up to say, let's see if this guy's going to throw another something at somebody's bus or whatever. They can't wait to get him back in the ring. But the young black kids, sometimes they throw the book at them. And so I'm asking mainstream, because most of the judges are Caucasian in this country, especially the ones that incarcerate black boys and girls, but especially the black boys. It's like they want to put them in the system so they get that free labor, and then the politicians can say, look, we're tough on crime. We're locking up more black boys for doing the same thing these white kids are doing, and they know that. You can Google that. So we're just calling for people to say, we see the example of how you can treat people when they're aberrant, when they go out and commit acts of a crime against property or even an individual. If we can get these judges and these prosecutors to start looking at young black boys the same way you look at Conor McGregor, there'd be less enmity and less of a desire to throw them in the penitentiary. Big C, that makes a lot of sense. How can we get mainstream to hold on to that thought, Big C? Your thoughts?
Johnson, you would love for mainstream to think of equality in America, because that's why America doesn't have equality, because of mainstream. You want to sit back, and it's led by the cry of our president, saying, let's take things back to the way that they were before. Let's take our country back. Think about that. Let's take our country back. This is a white man saying that to white America.
Yeah.
Because we had a black president for 8 years.
Yep.
Let's take our country back. I don't care what type of undertone you might want to put with that. The words are the words, and they speak volume.
People know what
it
means.
So when he said, let's take our country back, and let's treat them like we used to treat them, okay? That's what he said. When we could do what we wanted without having police recourse, okay? So when you think about the words of the President of the United States saying that I want an unequal society, and then when you look at the people who run law enforcement, Charlton, in this great nation of the United States,
yeah,
who dominate the court system in this great nation of the United States, minorities don't stand much of a chance. There is a trickling of minority in law enforcement and civil courts, Charlton,
yeah,
and criminal courts. But there's not an equal number, so there can never be equal justice. And when you have the President of the United States saying, beat him up, I'll pay your legal bills.
I remember that.
Do what you want to him. Whatever advancements we made in this country, Charlton, for decades was lost over the span of an election. When I think about how our president got elected, and the Republican Party is at fault for how he got elected, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you look at the Democratic run, there was basically two people. There was Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton
yes,
fighting each other. So the numbers were pretty equal. But when it came to the Republican Party, when you had 16 candidates, Charlton, fighting each other over politics,
yeah,
and you had this one clown sitting there saying, hey, I'll do this, saying things that had nothing to do with politics, people fell for it, Charlton.
Yeah,
the politicians created the problem that we have in the Oval Office right now, the Republican politicians, because they all fought each other. They didn't fight him.
No.
He let them knock each other out, Charlton. So he just happened to be the last man standing.
That's a very good point.
And so with the things that he was saying to the people who are like him, we're going to do things the way they used to be in this country.
Yes.
He appealed to them. That is his base. So when we talk about why he's in the position that he is, understand that the Republicans, being buffoons that they are, did not realize what they were doing to each other.
Well,
so that's the reason why, you had former FBI Director Comey said, I hope he stays in office.
Yes.
And doesn't get, convicted.
Yeah.
I want them to understand what they've done.
Well, I think we all talk about politics, but politics happens in everyone's lives too. I just want to close out with McGregor, because I love watching his career as a fighter. I know he and Cody Garbrandt don't get along, and Garbrandt's from Northern California, dealing with Team Alpha Male when Uriah Faber opened his gym up in Sacramento, and being there for that grand opening, just learning about a lot of the things that happen behind the scene with a lot of these fighters. And then Nate Diaz, been in a couple of fights with Nate Diaz, who's been there also up in Northern California. And this one thing about McGregor that I want people to see, especially for young African Americans, and the judge that oftentimes will determine if their lives are as valuable to them and their families as McGregor. I got to look at McGregor 2017. He attacked the bus full of UFC fighters in 2018. In 2017, he shoved a referee. Now, I just imagine if he were an African American there's always this push, lock them up, got to get them off the street, less tolerance. I've even seen where some school teachers have had enmity for young black boys. Now, Big C Sports, the only sports going to talk about it. Everybody else says, hey, man, how many points do you score? Hey, man, how big is your wingspan? What do you run the 40? You a 4-3 guy, 4-4, 4-5? Can you average 20 points a game? What do you bat? Do you bat like 385 or 258? But they don't ask about the young kids that are facing the criminal justice system. Because a lot of people love MMA, black and white, every ethnic group. But this is coming from fighters too. And to see it played out like this, I know we can't ask our black brethren to stand up too much for ourselves because they just won't. But I'm asking the mainstream judges and the prosecutors, can you at least look at the next African American kid that you're determined if he's going to go to prison or counseling? And I hope that you'll hold up what McGregor did and use that as a measuring stick. And you heard it on Big C Sports. I hope the next time you realize black kids and black Americans are 7 times more likely to be falsely accused of a crime. You've seen McGregor do a crime on tape, and they still can't wait to get him back in the ring. I hope they have that same kind of push, Big C. We will see. We know all's fair in love and war, but I wanna get on to something else. I know we started it with this fact that in the World Cup, and one of your friends, I gotta backtrack a little bit. When I look at what happened with Conor McGregor, I think Giuliani says they want to see him on their knees, hands and knees begging. That didn't happen to McGregor, Big C? He was in New York. They didn't have him on his hands and knees begging, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I love Rudy Giuliani. When you talk about having somebody deflect everything from you in a buffoonish way.
Yeah.
This was a man that was one time thought to be an intelligent man, Charlton, when he was a special prosecutor in New York.
Yes.
And went on to become the mayor of New York. And that's when people found out how unintelligent that he was. But even more so now, Charlton, every time he's on television and opening his mouth, this is a tactical situation every time you put Rudy Giuliani on television. Because when you're talking about Rudy Giuliani, you're no longer talking about Donald Trump.
That's true.
And that's the tactic, Charlton. The American needs to understand that there is a reason why they do the things that they do. Minorities are not allowed that same leisure, Charlton, in going out doing these particular things. But here it is, where you have a guy that you know is doing and has done inappropriate things, and getting away with it, using a monument clause, with his family, allowing his daughter and son-in-law to make $84 million last year while working as advisors in the White House. Google, no one in the White House history has ever made that much money during any presidential term, less than 1 year.
1 year.
Working in the White House.
Wow, 1 year.
When you talk about enrichment occurring from a position, Charlton, and then you will see why certain policies are being made around the world. In Jerusalem, moving the U.S. Embassy.
Yes.
Stopping the war games in North Korea. When you see the deals made with China because his daughters, all her goods are made in China.
Yes.
But Rudy Giuliani comes out, Charlton, and he has people paying attention to him. Deflecting from what the real issue is.
Yes.
He's denying everything. You think about it, he's only been with the president 2 months now, I believe.
Yeah.
But he knows everything that has gone on with the president for the last 10, 12 years.
Yep.
So, how much information would Rudy Giuliani has? Is the president an open book? I guess he must not be, Charlton, because Rudy Giuliani was blindsided today by the district attorney of New York.
I saw
when
that.
They indicted the Trump organization for money laundering and misappropriation of finances.
Say that one more time, Big C.
And here it is. Think about this, Charlton.
Yes.
The Trump organization had taken in some $18 million, okay?
Yeah.
Donald Trump said he paid out more money than what he took in, paid out over $19 million to organizations.
How's that possible?
Now think about this. He said because they had little to no expenses.
Yeah.
So he said that the organization ran itself. They didn't need any administrators. They didn't need any executives. They didn't need any financiers to oversee anything. So the organization ran itself. Now you think about this. This is Donald Trump's word, that he paid out more than he took in.
Yeah.
Now, anybody can Google Donald Trump lawsuits on not paying vendors. Donald Trump is notorious for not paying his bills. Matter of fact, he's lost 2 attorneys already that was representing him in the White House because he wouldn't pay them. So if you fall for the Donald Trump paid out more than what he took in, you're a bigger fool than what you were when you elected him.
That's funny. I want you to bring that up one more time, because as we're asking people what it takes to keep all of us safe, and you know, I pull for the President of the United States no matter who it is. I pull for the office. I don't have to agree with the person, but I still think I go back to the days of Walter Cronkite, just the facts. And no matter who's in office, we still want our young people to Google anything we say, because we don't want you to take our word for anything if you can't verify. Even the late, great Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And if young people are involved in the process of voting, then they can't be fooled. Don't wait until you go home and have the news tell you something. You can Google it. So, Big C, I think it's important, even if it's just another minute, go back and just repeat what just happened with the Trump organization. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Trump organization took in a little over $18 million last year. But he said that he paid out over $19 million. He said he paid out more money than what the organization took in. And so my math is not the best, Charles. I mean, anybody who's listening to our program, and I'm not being a sexist here, when your wife pays out more than what you got in your checking account, okay? How do you give out more than what you took in without having a shortfall?
Hey,
but here it is. And here's a guy that says he's one of those intelligent people that he knows.
Yes.
But he was able to pay out more money out of the organization than what it took in. So I'm trying to find out where the extra money come from. If you only have $18 million in the bank account and you pay out $19.5 million, which check bounced?
That's called fake news, Big C. That's the fake news account. I just think it's interesting that you can learn that, because most sports stations, all they're going to do is keep you dumb. They're going to keep you as dumb as an ox. Just read me the score, boy. Tell me who won the game, boy. Where is LeBron James going to play, boy? And I hope that for the athletes that have children, don't raise them to be dumb. I think it's so important. I'm not saying we're the smartest people in the universe. I'm just saying Google everything. That's how you can learn as well as reading. I want to make this point. When I talk to different people, business leaders and people in business, everybody starts somewhere. Everybody who's made it to the top, they didn't start at the top. They have to work on their craft, and someone saw them and gave them that opportunity. We've always heard, when you're ready, the teacher will come. But for people that think about this, especially for young African-American athletes and mainstream too, if all we are is that score on a sports show, and we have no more intelligence than that, then you let people stereotype you and typecast you. That's our fault. So we never want to let our kids, I think about it this way, even for the broadcasters out there on major media, TV and radio, if they have the money, their kids go to a good school or a private school. And in that good school or private school, they're not just learning about who won the game. They're learning math. They're learning science. They're learning literature, history, arts. They're learning about the humanities. They're learning about everything that makes you well-rounded. And I hate that when they go and build up the black athlete as just a sports guy to shut up and dribble. I would just hate that that's the only information you have about the majority of African Americans. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, when you think about the culture as a whole, as far as what has been devoided of, Charlton, over the decades, what's been taken away from it, how it is undermined by mainstream society. You know, every invention that they've created basically has been taken away. Opportunities. When you think about over the years, when you think about the terrorist acts of Americans against minorities in this country, I'm talking about the hangings, the shootings, the killings of minorities. Those are terrorist acts that have been allowed to occur in this country, Charlton. You think about the richness of history that we have lost over the decades, Charlton, because those people were not able to live out their lives. You never know what they would have meant to society, Charlton, how they would have changed society in America. And many of our minority leaders, Charlton, have lost their lives that were, changing the face of America.
Yeah.
And so they were leaders in having minorities get education, Charlton, because it was something that was fought for. Thurgood Marshall, first minority Supreme Court justice, made it prominent, Charlton, that minorities could have an equal education in this country. Because this was something that was fought against in mainstream. You think about it. This is a country of supposed equality. And yet you didn't want minorities to have equal opportunity in education. So you think about how far behind that the minority society is in America, Charlton. Even though the achievements that they have achieved, look at all of what they did not have an opportunity to obtain over the years in this great country, Charlton.
Well, Big C,
so when we look at where they are now and they say, shouldn't you be happy? No, we have been devoid for decades of opportunity to exceed.
Well, even when you think about that and people think that we're going way back to the days of Jim Crow, it's been proven, scientifically proven. If you mark white on your loan application, you have the same credentials as someone who marks black, you're more likely to get a loan. And you can Google that. That's still that red line behavior
Charlton,
that a lot of banks have done.
Question.
Yeah.
When did desegregation happen in America?
I'm still looking for it.
Okay, so no, I'm just talking about as far as the law.
Oh, civil rights,
desegregation occurred in the mid, I believe in 68. In 1968. How many years ago was that, Charlton?
Right about 50.
50 years. 50 years. So when people say that minorities should be happy in America, Charlton, they've only had 50 years of freedom in this country. Think about that. Minority African Americans have only had 50 years of freedom in this country. Yes, slavery was abolished in the 1800s. But African Americans have only had freedom for 50 years in America. They've been allowed to integrate in some sports, things like that. But that was just an athletic field, Charlton, for some other people to make money. Okay? But when we're talking about freedom as a society, African Americans have only had 50 years of freedom in America, Charlton.
I think when you look at the dichotomy of people in the United States of America, and this is why, to me, Big C Sports is so important. It's not about ego. It's just growing up as a young African American man, I rarely saw anything positive about people who look like me unless I was watching sports or unless there was a news special that came on. That's why Ali was so popular. He made people realize that you're not just some athlete. You have a lot more to offer than that. And even to this day, most of your mainstream sports programs, they don't talk about anything other than the scores. And that's unfortunately when you see the most African Americans. So I want to make sure that all people can understand to elucidate that subject. That's why I asked them to Google everything. Understand the Constitution, understand your senators and your congressmen, and that oftentimes they're passing laws that affect us. And it's not just about the sports. I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports, whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league. When you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. So that's so important that oftentimes people may say, well, where do I see anyone who looks like me? And I just think it's anathema to ending this racism that we have that's learned. You're not born with it, it's learned. But for the average young black athlete, when you want to see TV and see someone who looks like you, if you're not watching the sports channel, you rarely see it unless it's a news anchor. There's not that many TV shows. That's why it's important to not just read the numbers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, if you look at how old the president is, I believe he's somewhere between 71 and 72 years old. Okay? When he said we want to take this country back to what it used to be. And during that time when desegregation occurred in America, he was dodging the draft for Vietnam.
Yeah, he was.
Okay?
Yeah.
So minorities were going to the war. But when we look on television 50 years ago, you didn't see mainstream television with anybody that was minority. This is the things that he talked about. He resonated with those people that could reminisce from 50 years ago. That's why those numbers were so high in white Americans above the age of 68 years old, Charlton, going out voting. Because they could remember that. When they did not have to look at people of color on television, in power, dictating what society was going to be in this free world.
Yeah.
They didn't have to look at that, Charlton, so he resonated with those people.
Yeah.
So when we look at where we've gotten to and where we have not gotten to and where we've come from, Charlton, segregation has created the problem in America. So when you used to seeing people who look like you,
yeah,
and then you see someone who doesn't look like you in charge, it creates a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Emotionally. And when people say, no, this is a fair and equal country, it's like I've heard people say to me still to this day, I have black friends.
Yeah.
And I'll ask anybody in the mainstream, and mainstream I mean is white. How many times have you ever told anybody in your life, yeah, I have white friends? Think about that. Think about how powerful that statement is. That you can identify the number of black friends that you have, but you can't identify the number of white friends you have because everybody white is a friend of yours.
Well,
you will quantify it by saying, yeah, I have black friends, or I know somebody black.
Yeah.
You think about how racist that statement is.
Well, I think sometimes when people might say, so why do we talk about the race thing? Because it's real, and other people won't do it. And I'm asking to mainstream, because I know a lot of black guys are afraid they're going to lose their job. So I'm asking my decent mainstream, like, I don't think that Steve Kerr is the only egalitarian white American. I don't think that Coach Pop is the only egalitarian white American. I don't think the late Billy Graham was the only egalitarian white American. There are a lot of good people who do a lot of good things of all colors. So I'm asking for the mainstream that's conscious of that, not the ones who think that we got to keep this division going on, because it's going to take mainstream to change it. If it's in your heart, if it's not in your heart, that's okay, not talking to you. But if it's in your heart, because a lot of the black reporters that work for you, they're afraid to even talk to you about what's really going on in our neighborhoods. How even myself, working in the lending industry, there are many times when I could not get a loan for a black client, but a white client with a lower credit score would get a home, a lower interest rate. I didn't know that until I got into the banking business. Sometimes people thought, oh, well, maybe they just work harder, I got better credit. No, I've seen that with my own two eyes from the major banks in the United States of America. They know it still goes on. That's why Kamala Harris had a $26 billion settlement with Wells Fargo Bank. That was in like 2012. You can Google that. So this is not going back 50 years ago. This is recent. So we make an appeal to mainstream, not the bigots, but the decent people, like the ones who go to church and pray to Jesus Christ. Those people. We can change it. We can end racism and sexism, but we got to make sure that you know it exists and it bothers people. We're not going to get that from a mainstream black athletes. Bixie, I want to touch a little bit on your friend Vladimir Putin, the World Cup over in Russia. World Cup starts tomorrow. Now, I know we already had a lot of people clamoring about who's going to play who and who's going to win, but I think Russia, they already had a win, and I believe it was over Saudi Arabia. Did they shut them out 5-0, Bixie? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if they shut them out or they were scared to score.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to get out the country alive. Now we know that people who have gone against Putin sometime has not seen the next day, next week, next year.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So Saudi Arabia, understood that, yes, we're an oil company just like Russia is.
Yeah.
But if we go in there and do the wrong thing, we may not get out of this.
Yeah.
There's been planes shot down, have gone down in that region.
Yeah.
Okay? And no one knows how the plane came out of the sky. So, but Russia, the host nation, the host nation of the World Cup, Charlton, has never lost a first-round game.
No. So
this was par for the course, Russia going out. But, it almost seems like Saudi Arabia didn't try. When you get shut out 5-0, Charlton, in a soccer match, in the World Cup, and you've qualified to be one of the best teams in the world, Charlton. You think about it. The U.S. didn't qualify, so we don't have a dog in the fight. Well, I take this back. Donald Trump is qualified.
He got
to
a
deal with
couple.
Russia. Because he's trying to get him back into the G7 to make it the G8 again.
That's
because
incredible.
He's saying he's good people, and he loves his people, and he does wonderful over there. He's a great guy. I've met him once or twice.
Yeah. This
is his speech on him. So, but the Russian Federation went out and handled business today in the first round of the World Cup.
I tell you what, Big C, I appreciate so much the fact that young people read. And I love that sports will galvanize. If we look at what's happening right now with Russia and the world convening on Russia to watch sports. Our world has so much political in everything we do. Nations that get along, some that don't get along. And the fact that we can go to one of the countries for the World Cup, yet they're not even part of the G7. And you think about the fact that their leader, Putin, is not welcomed by many of the world egalitarian leaders, but they can still host the cup because politics and sports can coincide. You don't have to always like your neighbor to talk to your neighbor. You don't have to always like someone at work to talk to your coworker. Sometimes spouses don't get along. You can still be civil. But what we really hope with Big C Sports, at least speaking for myself, Big C, I hope that people can realize you don't have to be just a linear person in your conversation. Who won the game, Big C? Who's going to get drafted where, Big C? What time will Tom Brady report to camp? Do you think Ezekiel Elliott's going to have a 1,000-yard season? Who's going to be the next, star running back in the NFL? That's great conversation. But I just want to say to the young people, thank you for Googling. Thank you for not being a sycophant. Thank you for not shutting up and dribble and staying in your lane. Because Big C Sports is the only sports show out there. And you can Google that you will learn more about what's going on in the world outside of who won a game. But speaking of who won a game, Big C, I want to just throw it back to this world of golf real quick before we touch on a few more things. When I look at some of the world top golfers, and they're not doing that well. We have, of the top golfers, they're struggling with Mickelson being +7. I think Spieth is 8. Tiger Woods right around 8. And not too many guys are having a good go at it. But you know what's going to happen when they come out tomorrow? They're going to regroup. They're going to go out to the greens, and they're going to swing again. They're going to get right back in it. So just like in life, you don't have to have a good day every day. Sometimes our prayers fall short. Sometimes we just fall short, period. But the fact that they're going to be out there doing it again, it's just like politics, Big C. We got to fight for what we want. It's not always going to be easy. That's how sports and politics relates. Our countries don't have to see eye to eye, but still people convene on Russia throughout the world for the cup, and also this tournament over in the golfers, top golfers in the world struggling. What is it about an athlete that gets right back up and swings the club again, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, it's a thing called perseverance, the willingness not to give up. That's what drives athletes. And I don't care if you're on a losing team or you're in the best team in the world or even as an individual. Your goal is always to be the best.
Oh, yeah.
You do not go out and put in the work every day, every week to lose. You go out to be competitive and hopefully win. In every athlete's DNA, it's the willingness to achieve. That's the biggest thing that drives you, the willingness to achieve. And I think with all the athletes now, Charlton, and even in past athletes, you always were part of a spectacle. There was a crowd that was generally watching.
Yeah.
And so you were motivated through the emotions of the crowd, Charlton, that drove you. And when you look at the guys right now that are struggling at the U.S. Open, when you're looking at Spieth, you're looking at McIlroy, you're looking at Mickelson, you're looking at Woods, none of these guys are less than +8, Charlton.
Yeah.
So they're basically not in the running technically, but they are in the running.
Yeah.
When you think about it, the cut on this tournament is going to be high. When the leaders right now are just -1, Charlton.
Yeah.
So you think about somebody being 7 shots over right now.
Yes.
You're 8 shots off the lead. That normally makes the cut in many tournaments. All you need is a good second round. You shoot a 68, 69, you're in the hunt, Charlton.
Yeah.
You'll make the cut. But I think the cut line tomorrow is that you're going to have to shoot at least a 68 if you're one of those plus golfers, Charlton, to make it for the weekend. But when we look at the struggles of the golfers that we always think are going to be there, and I think they've put so much pressure on themselves trying to appease the media, not the crowd, Charlton, because the gallery is not what's ranking them, is that they've become the modern-day athlete.
Yeah.
Is that they pay attention to the news cycles, the sports cycles. They're sitting up listening. You know, it's like the president saying, I only watch Fox. I don't watch CNN. It's amazing he knows everything that goes on CNN.
Yeah, he watches.
And MSNBC.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he watches those programs at night. and, you know, Fox just calls him.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you look at the athlete, you know, it's like when I look at the U.S. Open right now, and I think about the top dogs out there, marketing-wise.
Yeah.
Not playing-wise, but marketing-wise. And that's Spieth. That's Mickelson. That's Tiger Woods. That's McIlroy.
Yeah.
These are the top dogs marketing-wise.
Yeah.
When we look at the NBA, you know, you do that comparison. Everybody's – and we're going to be sick of it for the next 3 weeks. Where's LeBron going? Where's LeBron going?
He's going to go where he want to go.
He's going to go wherever he want to go.
Yeah.
He don't have a dog in any of these shows. You know, he don't even have a pony in these shows, Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
LeBron's a grown man. So they think by resonating that every day, every hour, where's LeBron going?
Yeah.
Who's going to join LeBron? You know, what is he going to do? They're going to create a super team. Wherever LeBron has gone, it's been a super team, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like these golfers that are not in the hunt today
Yeah.
that we named. They're still super golfers, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
They're super marketing material for Madison Avenue.
Yeah.
They just have to make their game more competitive, stop paying attention to the sports news cycle, pay more attention to the fairways and greens.
I think that's true. So obviously they'll come back and they'll finish strong tomorrow and finish strong throughout the weekend, but it's just about overcoming some adversity. And, you know, starting this show with McGregor and just watching a lot of things that happen with young black boys, because I am one, so I got to make sure when I look at things that happen to me, going to college, being told that we don't have apartments, but in the paper it said you have vacancies. So me and some black teammates showed up, and there happened to be a white landlord. He said, oh, actually, well, we don't have any openings. We said, oh, well, it said in the paper that you did, and we even called. Oh, well, you know, we just had someone come in before you got here, and they bought up all the places. It's like, oh, okay. Hey, but have a good year, and good luck with the team, and God bless you, right? Pat us on the back and all that stuff. So we feel like, well, man, I feel like I wasted my time. Oh, well, but at least he patted us on the back, right? Later to find out, most of my white guys went down later that day and the next day and got apartments. More than one of them. How do we know? Because they told us. So I know that still goes on. So with the criminal justice system, same thing. I know some guys are they're so dumb, they only want to watch the score. But you got to wake up. I don't want people being that way on our program. So that's why we'll forever talk about it. And I hope that mainstream will start catching on too. Big C, I know with the world of the NFL, baseball's great right now, but it's missing something. I don't know, maybe because when I look up in the stands, there's so many empty seats. The game down with the San Francisco Giants down there in Miami. And that's a beautiful stadium. But you wonder if the whole game is played in warm-ups, because it looks like there may be no more than 5,000 or 10,000 in the stands. I don't know what they're going to do about that baseball team down there in that beautiful stadium. Maybe people in Florida don't want to play in a dome. But even when I come out here to Oakland, you look up at the Coliseum, there's about 10, 15,000 people. Now, the Giants still have a good draw, but they don't sell out all the time. There used to be where you couldn't get a seat at Giant Stadium. 41,000 strong. Now, if they get 35,000, is a good crowd. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to look at where we are. We're in June, middle of June. What just happened? Schools let out.
Yeah.
Families heading on vacation. Alternative dollars, Charlton, is what people are looking for now. You're looking for bang for the buck.
Yeah.
You think about what it takes to take a family to a ballpark. It's not cheap anymore, Charlton.
No.
You take a family to a ballpark. Just a baseball game, you're going to shell out $25, $30 for bleacher seats, Charlton.
Yeah.
Sitting out in the bleachers. You're not talking about parking, which is another $25, $30 for a car. And if you got a kid that's with you that wants a $6 Coca-Cola,
bring your own.
An $8 hot dog. Well, they don't allow you to bring the packs into the stadium, Charlton, because, you know, just the screening process.
Yep.
So you think about just the hot dog and the Coke, you're out of $14.
Yeah.
For your kid, and you better not have more than one. So you think about that, then yourself. I mean, if you want an adult beverage, that's going to be $12.
Yeah.
And you're not going to let the kid eat a hot dog by itself. You're going to join him.
Yep.
So just in food alone, Charlton, you're out of $50.
Yeah.
just in some food.
Yeah.
Oh, and you got this little whining kid next to you who wants a program. Tell him to read the scoreboard.
Tell him to Google it.
He wants a memento. Oh, Dad, look, I don't even know you right now. I don't even like you, really. You have to tell him that.
Yeah.
But, here it is. Your love will make you buy that kid a banner, a T-shirt, a baseball cap, a program.
Yeah.
So, just one child, Charlton, going to a baseball game, you're going to drop $150 to $200.
Well, I remember
$150 to $200.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about going on a vacation, Charlton, and you have multiple children, how many days will $150 get you in a medium hotel?
Yeah.
This is what you're looking at. And if you're in some beach place, Charlton, they can be in the ocean swimming every day.
Yeah, that's true.
So these are the things that families are starting to look at. How can I get something for my dollar? If I'm at a baseball game, that's three hours that I've spent.
Yeah.
If I go on vacation and spend 3 to 5 days, what's going to be the overall investment in that versus going to see a baseball game or two during the summer?
Well, I missed the days back at Candlestick Park. We used to actually sneak in to Candlestick Park to watch the 49ers play. There was a part of the stadium, they didn't have it all sealed up. Some good old boys dug a little hole under the ground. It was almost like watching some of the movies we see where they dig a hole, like Shawshank Redemption. They said they dug a hole. I think they dug a hole in the ground in Shawshank Redemption, the great Morgan Freeman. We used to sneak into Candlestick Park, and we didn't know that people were paying a lot of money to go to the game. We could ride our bicycles, park them by the Candlestick, and walk through some tunnels to get to the stadium. That was my first fun of going to a ballpark, just sneaking into it. But I know things have changed now, and I hope that we can make it fun for the kids again, whether have a free kids day once a month. Get the kids out to the ballpark. Let them see guys like Willie Mays and Juan Marichal or Barry Bonds or Hank Aaron or Reggie Jackson, Ricky Henderson, seeing someone like a catfish hunter throw the ball. I think those days need to be recognized by these billionaire owners that own teams. Speaking of ownership, for all the good old boys that love to get down, when you think about music, there's a big picnic coming around California. You have Peabo Bryson. You also have one of my better friends, Jeffrey Osborne. If ever you're in my arms again, that's Peabo. But when you woo, 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 Big C, that's no other than the great Jeffrey Osborne, Big C. Can you woo, 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 Big C?
I can woo myself out of here periodically, but, you're talking about a great old school show, Charlton, that will take people back and reminisce.
Yeah.
That you think about the songs of those days that were about love and appreciation and respect.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that have waned from society. It's waned from sports, Charlton. You see these sports figures on these highlight shows. And that's one of the things I hate about these highlight shows, Charlton, is that they want to show the fights that players are getting into.
Yeah.
We have enough problem in society. And sports is supposed to be a galvanizing situation for Americans to show people sportsmanship, camaraderie. But when you highlight the fights, there's a complete baseball game that goes on. But all of a sudden, there's some mishap that occurs in the game, and you show a bench-clearing brawl. You show players taking swings at each other.
Yeah.
We see all this in these sports. And some of these games are just regional games, Charlton, but they make it a national spectacle.
Yeah.
And so these are some of the things that the sports shows need to take responsibility for. Is not to always show the violent, non-playing side of things, Charlton.
Yeah.
Sports are violent enough as they are.
Right.
But to let young players see that, okay, it's okay to get into a tiff. It's okay to take a swing at an opposing pitcher because he's hit you with a baseball. It's okay to get up and for a catcher to swing at a player who slid into home base.
Yeah.
And may have bumped him, a little too roughly. So when we see these things from the sports shows, Charlton, that they promote violence to the youth of America. They have to understand when they show somebody making a dunk, making a three-point shot, they don't need to come back showing somebody swinging at the other guy, Charlton. You see a strikeout, you see a home run. We don't need to see baseball players swinging, throwing punches at each other, Charlton. We see that in boxing matches.
Yeah.
We see that in the MMA. We see too much evidence in hockey. But the sports shows, to polarize it for America, they have to take a step back and look at themselves and say, where are we promoting sportsmanship when we want to promote fighting within a team sport.
You know what's interesting about that statement? If a player or a fan runs onto the field, back in the day, they would show that fan, they would show him being, grabbed by security and escorted off the field. Now, they don't show that anymore. Why? Because they don't want to give attention to the person that interrupted the sporting event. But, like you just said, they can also choose not to show fighting. Because that's showing, we talk about, do they stand for the flag or do they not stand for the flag? And people have their own thing. Maybe they're praying. You ever think about that? Maybe they're taking a knee to praise Christ as opposed to any anathema against the flag. But when they can stop showing fights on fields too, because that's going into the minds and the eyes and the ears of young people. We know grown folks are going to do what they do. But I would love to see even them pull away from showing a fight. You don't have to see that. I remember there was a game back in college. It was Notre Dame, and they played the University of Miami. I think they were down in the Orange Bowl, and they had a fracas before the game. There was also an incident where I think Florida State.
That's the one that was played at South Bend.
At South Bend,
they came out of the tunnel and got into a fight.
Yeah, that's the Florida State, and I think it was Notre Dame that did that. I think even USC, when Marinovich was a quarterback, they were playing at Notre Dame with Lou Holtz and Tony Rice at quarterback. They also had some fisticuffs going on too. Colorado and Miami had that same thing. Big C, why is Miami involved in so many of those fracasses, Big C? Your thoughts?
Look at Miami and Texas down in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
And they put in the no taunting rules by the NCAA.
Yeah.
After they beat up on John Malkovich and the Texas Longhorns New Year's Day game, Charlton, where they just it seemed like they ran out of numbers on the scoreboard at one point.
Yeah, that's funny because you talk about sportsmanship, and just like we opened up talking about McGregor. I know McGregor did something stupid, but he's Caucasian, and they can't wait to get him back to work. There are young African-American boys all around this country that have done less, and they want to expel them from school. They want to send them to detention, put them on probation, even send some to kick them out of high school and put them in continuation. And I know that's a fact. People know that's a fact. So for the clergy that's quiet, and we just want to pray to Jesus, I hope that even our clergy can speak to some of the mainstream population about how do we bridge our society so we treat more black kids like we treat the white kids. That means that stat that you can Google, that African Americans are 7 times more likely to be falsely accused of a crime than our white counterparts. If the clergy can get together with their congregations and talk about that, we can put an end to that. I just think that's so important, especially because kids are out of school. And we want to be an advocate for our kids to be safe, not just telling you who won a game or where somebody's going to play next. And because nobody's doing it but Big C Sports, I know some of the news programs are. I just hope that we can have that conversation. Big C, I want to close out by saying I think oh, Canada, our home and native land. I think they hired a coach for the Toronto Raptors. The bad part is they had just fired Casey after winning more games than any coach they've ever had in the history of that organization. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they hired a coach, and his last name is Nurse. So I guess if they ever have a medical situation, they always say they're a nurse in the house.
Nursing back to
health. Got one right on the bench. But,
yeah.
I don't know how the Toronto Raptors are going to improve on this situation as an organization or as a team from last year, Charlton. You win 59 games, the most in franchise history, and you bring in somebody that really doesn't have that NBA lineage that everybody's used to. Now, I guess they were kind of looking at the same scenario that the Warriors had a few years ago when they got rid of Mark Jackson.
Yeah.
After setting a franchise record of 53 wins and bringing in Steve Kerr and moving on to a championship the next year.
They want to put out the fire.
Lightning doesn't strike twice.
No.
In situations like that. Plus, you have to look at Steve Kerr's background, who had won 2 championships with the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Had also won 2 championships with the San Antonio Spurs, Charlton.
Yeah. And
worked under Greg Popovich. So he had been around and he understood the game, Charlton. When you look at him now on that championship ring list, he's up there high, with 7 in total because he won one as a coach with the Spurs.
Yeah.
So he had 8 overall rings now. So he's in that Russell, category, Charlton. He surpassed a few other people, Phil Jackson and Pat Riley. You know, he's in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
But when you bring in Nurse, Charlton, you know, the big question mark is that did you want to bring in somebody who that the team was bigger than? Or, you know, did you bring in somebody who had basketball knowledge? I think in this move is that they wanted the team to be in the forefront and not the coach.
Yeah.
Not that Americans know much about the Toronto Raptors, Charlton. You know, it's one of those things, you can have a solid team, but the NBA really doesn't want them in the championship, Charlton.
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's no marketing.
Yeah.
When you look at how much people said that, you know, the Warriors and the Cavaliers 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
You know, the only people that were crying about that, Charlton, didn't live in those regions.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because when there was the Lakers and the Celtics, it was reveled by the world, Charlton. Hey,
Yeah.
the Lakers and the Celtics again.
Yep.
Again.
They loved it.
You know, that's all people say. They can love that, Charlton. The Chicago Bulls again. The Chicago Bulls again. You know, the Houston Rockets back-to-back, Charlton. People looked at the region that they were from.
Yeah.
They love it. It's everybody else who hates it. And when they talk about building a super team,
Yeah.
wherever you build the next super team in the NBA, everybody will love it. It's just that Toronto didn't build it with this coaching hire.
Yeah, that's always the case. I don't think many people on the West Coast got tired of the 49ers and the Cowboys or the Raiders and the Steelers or the Redskins and Cowboys. It's always the Green Bay and Chicago. It's always something that people love when you love tradition. Have seen excellence. Speaking of excellence, Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bandini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble, Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking at the NFL right now. You know, they're all in these mandatory mini camps. There's been a lot of talk about who's not showing up and all. Matter of fact, your buddy out there, John Gruden, just cut a quarterback he made a trade for a couple of weeks ago from the New York Jets.
Yeah.
Christian Hacklenberg.
Yeah.
You know, former third-round draft pick. You know, I was looking at some numbers, Charlton, and we had 4 quarterbacks drafted in the first 10 picks last NFL draft.
Yeah.
5 in total in the first round.
Yeah.
But then I went a little deeper, Charlton. You realize there's 52 quarterbacks, 52 Super Bowls, 52. And everybody's talking about drafting the franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Of those 52 Super Bowls, Charlton, only 16 quarterbacks were first-round draft picks.
Wow.
To win a Super Bowl. So when you talk about your franchise quarterback, you don't have to get him in the first round. There's plenty of Super Bowl winners after the third round in the draft, Charlton.
That's always true, Big C. And speaking of always true, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m., follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage all on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.